I love a good villain. The kind we can't help rooting for. They flirt, fight, manipulate, and make us care when we really shouldn't. But why does their chemistry with everyone on screen feel impossible to look away from? Why do we feel safe exploring their darkness? Why does watching them self-destruct give us a rush? And why, when they choose someone, do we wish it was us? From Villanelle to Loki to Miranda Priestley, the most iconic villains share one secret. They know how to crawl under our skin and live not rent-free, but make us more than happy to pay them for sticking around. This is a breakdown of why we love them, why we root for them, and why the chemistry of evil just works. The line between good and evil doesn't run between heroes and villains. It runs through every human heart, including yours and mine. We all have that small corner of darkness, those impulses we're told to suppress, those thoughts we're never allowed to say. From roller coasters to horror movies, we love being scared. Think about the game Peekaboo. From the time we're young, we learn that fear can be followed by laughter and relief. It teaches babies object permanence, the understanding that objects and people, much like the darkness we grow to possess, still exists when out of sight. Of course, as we get older, our enjoyment of fear grows more complicated. Generally, there are 5 reasons we're drawn to darkness. 5 reasons we can't look away from the villain, and each type of villain taps into a different part of that psychology. The first, the safety net, is the thrill of exploring power when we know we're protected. We can admire their grandeur, their ability to make people want their approval, knowing we'll never actually be under their thumb. And the type of villain who best demonstrates this dynamic is the one who makes everyone compete for scraps of validation. The it girl. Now, an it girl doesn't just apply to women. Fight Club's Tyler Durden is essentially a diva who plays mind games with everyone who wants to be his number 2, which is saying a lot considering his number 2 is himself. Sure, he's peak Brad Pitt. He's also a terrorist, a contaminator of food and media, petty thief, and human soap maker. Most importantly, he's a figment of the narrator's imagination for the exact reason we're drawn to an it girl villain. As an idealized alter ego, pumped full of charisma and uninhibited free will, he exists purely to cope with boredom and existential dread. We'd all love to flip a switch and have everything we hate about ourselves swapped with everything we envy about others. The it girl villain is an apex predator. Everyone emulates them, everyone wants their love, and they give it to almost no one. A level of power we're familiar with in the real world, which is so enticing, so life-altering, that most would never give it up once they have it. Which is why, when Regina is introduced in Mean Girls, Janice says, "And evil takes a human form in Regina George." Regina is what we typically think of when we think about an it girl. Stunning, selfish, and in a position of power that makes her untouchable. Part myth, part classroom icon, almost near enough to touch. She's also an escapist character, for us and for other characters, unafraid to go for what she wants and knows she deserves. I mean, she apparently punched a girl in the face, and the girl was so happy about it because to hit her, Regina would have had to notice her. The entire school operates under Regina's rules. Who can sit where, when you can wear pink or jeans or a ponytail, who's in and who's out. Even when Regina is dethroned, people still care what she thinks. The power dynamic is so ingrained that her opinion matters even from the bottom of the social ladder. By the time Katie replaces her as a new Queen Bee, Katie's become so obsessed with the positive qualities associated with Regina's role that she doesn't realize she's become a mean girl too. Regina, a hot, popular high school girl, is likely the closest any of us will come to an it girl villain. She's where that safety net I mentioned should feel thinnest. But because we never have to actually know her, our imaginary bubble where the evil Regina commits will never affect us can remain unpopped. I personally admired Regina's third act smarts to weaponize the burn book with her own edition rather than just targeting Katie. The fallout makes us realize a lot of what was said in the book clearly couldn't come from just Regina and the plastics. The rumors were spread around by their own friends, and Regina just cataloged it for laughs. This brilliant revenge has her destroy her own social ecosystem, but positions herself as a victim in the process. Because she isn't so much the villain creating discontent or chaos as she is the one with the confidence to take the power for herself and use others' darkness to control them. Now, imagine Regina, but older. Because as I mentioned, the it girl villain really has no limits of gender or age. This version is not ruling a cafeteria, but an entire industry, where instead of mean girls scrambling for her attention, it's grown adults sacrificing their personal lives, their relationships, their sense of self. Depending on how you look at The Devil Wears Prada, who's the villain is up for debate. Andy's friends, her boyfriend, weren't the best. Even Andy herself is sort of a villain for how she self-sabotages her dream, pursuing power in a field she doesn't really care about. Yet there's no arguing that the titular devil is Miranda. The movie is essentially a coming-of-age story for someone in their 20s. It's about discovering your self-worth and realizing that loyalty to a company or a boss is soulless in the grand scheme of things. Yet we root for Andy to get Miranda's approval, all the while knowing she's totally lost herself. Because Miranda was fabulous, unwavering. She was good at her job and kept everyone paid and on top. You worked a year for her, you could work anywhere, so people got what they wanted out of the situation, including Andy. The true root of it is that on some level, we want to be that ambitious person who goes for the jugular, but we can't for fear we aren't strong enough or the guilt, even hypothetical, is inescapable. Miranda is that person, and the cost of that ambition is evident in everything around her. In real life, workplaces like Runway are toxic. People always focus on Andy being directly targeted, like the hurricane scene or the unreleased Harry Potter manuscript, but the real key moment is gird your loins, when Miranda arrives early and everyone scrambles to clear desks, move clothes, change shoes. It's played for laughs, but nothing in that scene creates a better magazine. Miranda instills so much fear in her employees who manage her rather than doing their jobs. In this way, Miranda is both the devil and the one who saved Andy by setting an example of how not to live. The Anna Wintour stand-in says it herself when she faxes HR at Andy's new job interview, saying the girl was, among all of her assistants, the biggest disappointment, and if they don't hire her, they're idiots. In her whole career, Miranda probably never encountered someone with the power to walk away. When Andy shows an ounce of humanity waving at her, Miranda hesitates, unable to respond to this unfamiliar feeling. I love that Andy never sees her brief smile before Miranda reverts to her old self. For the viewer, this hidden layer gives us hope that maybe the mean girls in our lives have such depth. This dynamic from a distance feels aspirational. The It Girl teaches us that villainy is magnetic when it's selective. The safety net allows us to explore our hunger for validation from those who withhold it without any real consequences. After all, we don't need to apply real-world morals to fiction. We can admire Regina's confidence, Miranda's authority, Tyler's intensity, but ultimately it appears really lonely in the end. Many stories with the most beloved villains in television actually don't have this kind of structure. There's no obvious leader or ruler, just a collective of people who are the worst, and somehow we love them even more for it. So often, great TV shows have casts where pointing out someone who is truly good is next to impossible, and genre really isn't a factor. Breaking Bad, The White Lotus, The Sopranos, It's Always Sunny, Sons of Anarchy, Arrested Development, I really could go on. This connects with the second reason we love being afraid, and by extension, villains. The flood. When we're afraid, we get a rush of adrenaline, endorphins, and dopamine. This biochemical cocktail floods us with a sense of euphoria, which is why the next type of villain, called the collective, is best demonstrated not through drama, but humor. Because when there's no hero or moral anchor, just a cast of assholes who deserve each other, we can't help but cackle. Not to mention, watching horrible people have horrible things happen to them is as chemically as it is emotionally delicious. Of the most popular shows of all time, Seinfeld is one that, as the seasons went on, the less we liked them as people, but the more we enjoyed the show. It has long been billed by its co-creator Larry David as a show with no hugging, no learning, and as Jerry says, they're the worst. So absurdly horrible that they don't feel threatening. Jerry's mugged an old lady for a bag of bread, George has pushed aside his girlfriend, his mother, and an entire birthday party of kids to escape a tiny fire, and Kramer and Elaine have had someone's dog taken care of because it kept her up all night with its barking. These are, of course, just blips in the show's 9-season run. Every episode of Seinfeld intentionally takes the mundane, nothing aspects of life that make the world of Miranda Priestly or Tyler Durden seem tempting and lampoons them into something entertaining. To be honest, when I was younger, I didn't get it. Why stew in NYC-based negativity and pettiness when I could just watch Friends? But I was missing the point. The cast of Seinfeld is not loved the same way It Girl villains are. We don't want to be them. They don't have any great emotional revelations or growth. If they did, the characters would steer away from placeholders for the horrible people in our lives, who we would then have to empathize with, and the whole hormone cocktail goes down the wrong pipe. Essentially, what makes the show so enjoyable isn't just that they're horrible, but they make each other worse. Jerry is supposedly the normal, successful one, yet he validates George's neuroses and encourages Elaine to accept the universe has already chosen the winners, so they might as well prioritize themselves. For Kramer too, he's the weirdest among them but the most secure in his identity, and his particular brand of chaos gets used by the others when it benefits them. They're the only people who understand each other, and no one else would tolerate them. Take Elaine. She starts the series as actually a nice person. She cares about the environment, family, friends, and is climbing in her career. As the series went on, she didn't seem to have much outside of the friend group. Not to mention, she saw George, someone she barely tolerated, become successful while her career crashed and burned. She becomes a massive ball of rage and petty revenge, and we enjoyed her all the more for it. Because she's surrounded by the trio's arrogance and insecurity instead of being the moral center, she becomes the most insane of them all. The worldview she's gleaned from Jerry that the world is unfair so you might as well put yourself first is proven right. Her new job isn't something she worked hard for, it falls in her lap when she's at her lowest. And it's a place where she's not even punished for eating a $29,000 piece of cake. What incentive does she have to be a better person? None. And we love it. Because heck, at our worst, at least we're not that bad, right? In the series finale, the group even watches a man get mugged and laughs when Kramer films it. They're so in sync with their awfulness that standing by and mocking a crime feels like any other day. When they're arrested and put on trial for it, character witnesses parade through, which is why the finale is hated so much. Given everything we'd seen of the show, it actually felt disingenuous to push them to change and punish them with prison time. Seinfeld's cast are flawed people in a flawed world. Now, if they'd schemed and managed to get off on some pathetic technicality, that's an ending we could have loved. Alternatively, a show with collective villains that actually lets them stay horrible to the end is Succession. For 4 seasons, we have a show that's essentially, which of these assholes is going to inherit this asshole company? You're not supposed to like the Roys. They're a satire of the ultra-wealthy. They have endless, stupid infighting over small things because they take themselves far too seriously. At the end of the day, the stakes aren't all that high. If the company gets sold and none of them inherit CEO, they're still billionaires. Despite the title of the show, that's never what it's really about. At least not the succession of wealth. The real prize was Daddy's approval, and their father's abrupt death kinda kills any chance of that. So the siblings spend seasons destroying each other. Kendall, Shiv, and Roman care for each other in their own warped way, but their father trained them to see betrayal as common business practices. So they form alliances that last exactly as long as it takes to stab each other in the back. Half the time, you're not sure if they actually want to run the company, or if, like children, they just don't want their siblings to have that shiny toy they didn't want until it was no longer an option. It sounds morbid, but I really enjoy how miserable all these characters are. These are people with absolutely everything they could ask for, yet they can't find happiness or satisfaction and are genuinely confused as to why. Much like how their father dismisses guilt with no real person involved, we get a rush watching them destroy their own lives because they aren't real to us either. The average person feels helpless watching the rich get richer. Succession shows us they're not untouchable. They're just as ridiculous as they are privileged. And where Succession is most similar to Seinfeld is there's never that scene. The one where the writers force the audience and characters to sit down and confront how fucked up their behavior is. A part of you feels continuously betrayed by their actions, but under it all, you're not really surprised. Tom and Greg proved this best. Tom wants to be a Roy to impress his wife's father to be CEO. Greg just wants to stay employed and not be eaten alive. So Tom tortures Greg, physically, verbally, because Greg is the only person lower on the food chain. After all, you can't make a Tomelet without breaking a few Gregs. The ending of Succession sees the pair defeat the Roy children, but we don't think of them as heroes. is the logical conclusion of the Roy family's legacy. Tom betrays his cheating pregnant wife and her entire family to become CEO. Greg is willing to betray everyone, including Tom, for a scrap of advancement and is more country club douche than ever. This pair, like the siblings who approach business with all the seriousness of a frat house hazing, proves we never had anyone to root for, and watching them win feels perfectly, horribly right. That's what makes the collective so satisfying as a villain type. That biochemical flood we talked about. Whether it's Seinfeld's everyday nothingness we all wish we could crash out over without looking pathetic, or Succession's characters with every advantage destroying themselves over things that don't actually matter, it's the same. They have everything, they deserve nothing, and watching them get exactly what they earned gives us that rush. The thing I've noticed about this dynamic of collectively horrible people is that often none of them stand out as the most evil. None of them really thinks what they're doing is special or that bad. Like Jerry, who corrupts his entire friend group into believing life is unfair, so you might as well put yourself first. We wish we could be so devoid of guilt. However, some villains know they're that bad and enjoy it. They have a deeply flawed sense of morality that puts them on the good side and everyone else on the wrong. In the traditional sense, we're not supposed to like villains, let alone love them. Truth is, we all want to be good people, but show me someone who's never imagined pushing an annoying person off a cliff, and I'll call you a liar. Which is why, like the it girl who draws us through envy and the collective who gives us that overload of a chemical rush, this next type is a way for viewers to vicariously indulge their deepest desires to burn everything to the ground. These villains have looked in the mirror and professed pure philosophical commitment, either to chaos or an unbreakable code. They're the honest. And through them, we also get our third reason we're drawn to them: self-satisfaction. Many people enjoy pushing the envelope, seeking thrills, and seeing how much fear can be tolerated. If they can endure that pain, anxiety, and fear, they feel a sense of pride. We've made it through without looking away. And as the saying goes, do it scared. And the honest villain is the ultimate test. They simply are themselves, and watching them is a dare all its own. Take a villain with no origin story, no name, a villain who changes his backstory every time he tells it, not to hide the truth, but because to him, truth is undermining the logic of a world where morals are a fragile facade for the primordial urge to violence he believes exists within everyone. That's the Joker. Every era since the 40s has had its own version. Jack Nicholson cemented his dark, theatrical side. Mark Hamill gave him the definitive voice and laugh in the animated series. He's endlessly adaptable. A jovial prankster one decade, a violent gangster the next. You can tweak his proportions, cranking up the clownish features for escapism, or play up his damaged psyche when audiences want something personally haunting. But I feel like the Joker didn't become a cultural icon outside of DC fans until Heath Ledger. Ledger's performance in The Dark Knight reinterpreted the character as grounded, yet mysterious. And whether it was the brilliance of the performance, the quality of the direction, or the tragedy of Ledger's death soon after, this version of the Joker became more influential than Batman. Because within his black heart, the Joker is joy. Pure, unapologetic, jovial mayhem. No one can predict him. He embodies the simple fact that everything we know, love, and cherish can, at the push of a button, turn to dust. And he does it because disorder is his order. As the Joker told Harvey Dent, it's about sending a message. And that message is when pushed to their limits, people's reservations about violence disappear, so he'll happily do the pushing. Joker's almost supernatural, casting a spell on us. But unlike a fictional demon, he is human, and according to him, something is seriously broken in our world. That's somehow more disturbing because we can all feel that instability too. We all sense the cracks in society that we wish we could change. The Joker just takes that feeling to its extreme. If the world is broken and goodness is a lie, why not burn it all down? Another version of an honest villain, however, believes life has no purpose because every choice is predetermined. Rather than an agent of chaos, they are agents of fate. No Country for Old Men's Anton Chigurh is the personification of death. You can't root for him, but it does you no good to root against him, because in the world of Cormac McCarthy, fate always wins. The first time I heard people love Sugar, I hadn't seen the film yet. I mean, as far as appearances go, screenshots do this man no favors. On film, he radiates menace in every scene. He sees himself as more than human, the hand of God guided by fate with coin flips, and there's something relatable in that delusion. We all want to be more than what we are, but Sugar is constantly searching for signs, for fate's cosmic permission to commit violence. Sugar's interactions with two clerks really highlight this aspect of his character best. In the gas station scene, he didn't come in to rob the place, but he picks a fight over the clerk's indecisiveness. People who don't keep their word or who are constantly changing their minds are, to him, beyond contempt. He loads so much importance onto the coin, telling the man it's been traveling 22 years to get to this moment. It's mythical, bordering on humorous. He acts like the quarter is a trophy, the value of the man's life worth 25 cents. I also find it hilarious that Anton seems genuinely pleased when the man wins the coin toss, like he's just saved this guy's life. Only Sugar himself and we are in on his little secret of why he tells the man the quarter is lucky. We've seen what he's capable of, how he's methodical, how he strangled a man to death when he could have just shot him, and the satisfaction on his face when his victim took his last breath. For the other clerk at the trailer park, when she tells him no, she means it. Sugar repeats himself testing her, trying to intimidate her into changing her mind, but she made a choice and stuck with it. He could have easily killed her and taken the information, but she has her own code. Giving out her residence information is against the rules. Sugar recognizes she's living the way he imagines himself living, bound by an unbreakable code, and because she accepts that, he spares her. When Sugar confronts Carla Jean for his final kill, she challenges this belief. Ultimately, he's the one making the decisions. It's his word, not fate's. This clearly ruffles him, and he breaks his own rules. She refused to call the coin toss, something he told the gas station owner wasn't possible because it wouldn't be fair. But she did refuse, and he killed her anyway. Immediately after comes a car crash, he lets the witnesses at the accident scene live. His charmed life, the one he believed fate granted him for his strict adherence to its code, was a self-inflicted delusion. And that pulls us closer to him. As a reminder, before the randomness of fate, we're all equal. Now, Sugar and the Joker both fall into the category of the honest, but they couldn't be less alike. The Joker is deeply present in his version of the world. Not even a stay in Arkham can sway him. Sugar is more realistic. His honesty is a carefully constructed reality he accepts rather than the full truth. The honest villain shows us that conviction, even monstrous, is magnetic. This magnetism even leaves us in awe of a guy sporting a Lord Farquaad haircut. The self-satisfaction comes from enduring their presence without flinching, from watching them embody philosophies we'd never otherwise embrace. Villains who are evil for evil's sake are rarely likable. The honest villain works for us because they have motives. Twisted, difficult to understand, but accepted as truth. And the distance of fiction lets us explore their depths of all-consuming darkness without drowning. There's a rule of thumb that says villains are the heroes of their own stories. What that really means is they believe what they're doing either isn't wrong or is justified. The Joker and Sugar have built entire philosophies to support their actions. Honest villains sometimes have backstories that make us sympathize with these actions, but it's just as likely they were born monsters. Most beloved villains, though, have, to quote Shrek, layers, like an onion. Although it may not come until their life is at its end, some villains manage to shed their role as a monster in the hero's story, becoming an ally while maintaining the villainous aspects that made them lovable in the first place. A common piece of dating advice is to watch a scary movie. Given what we know about the chemicals released when we're afraid, we misattribute this rush of emotions toward the person we're spending that time with, not necessarily because of each other's company. This is our fourth reason we're drawn to villains: closeness with others. It's certainly a more benign version of trauma bonding, although there isn't any mutual aspect on the villain's behalf. We bond with these characters through observing their pain and growth and applying it to ourselves. The shared experience of watching their transformation creates an emotional connection. They're the sympathetic. These villains have layers that are explorable to the audience, backstories, wounds, and when they finally join the heroes, they bring their fire with them. Two of the most beloved redemption arcs in modern storytelling come from Avatar: The Last Airbender Zuko and Marvel's Loki. While Zuko and Loki are vastly different in characterization, they both are driven by validating their self-worth to fathers who will never love them. Zuko's arc is very different from the typical bad guy becomes good arc. His story focused on getting out of an abusive relationship with his father and him figuring out for himself what he truly wants and thinks is right. He even retains his core traits: bluntness, hardworking mindset, bad temper, after becoming a hero, because Zuko isn't the type of villain who redeemed himself and became good. He realized the honor he perceived from his father's world isn't synonymous with the values he holds. As a very moral person deep down, his motivations at the beginning were based on him trying to appease his father and escape exile. His change couldn't have happened without Iroh encouraging Zuko to look inward and define honor for himself, leading Zuko to realize that true honor comes from one's actions, not external validation. However, it took him going back home and eventually getting everything he wanted for Zuko to see that that wasn't what he wanted at all. Even after he had a quiet life with Iroh, Zuko didn't become good overnight. He still thought he was dishonorable and wanted his father's love and approval, so when his sister offered to join her in catching the Avatar, he worked with her and betrayed his uncle. When he finally figures out that Iroh was right all along, he stands up to his father, tells him his agenda to take over the world is wrong, and calls him out for all of the abuse he put him through for years. Ozai hated Zuko because he perceived him as weak, morally conflicted, and yes, if looking at the Joker and Shigur taught us anything, even the worst of the worst have their version of morals. It also bears mentioning Azula is an entirely different type of villain, which is why the siblings begin as antagonists but follow drastically different trajectories. Each has a bit of an inferiority complex. Zuko envies how Ozai favors his sister, and Azula envies how their mother favored Zuko. Zuko can fall back on the memory of their mother and her goodness, while Azula can only kneel in their father's shadow, projecting her rage onto those around her who are less powerful. So Azula controls others through fear. To fear and be feared is what Ozai has taught her. Zuko, who has seen their world from the outside, slowly begins to let people in who follow him out of bonds they built, not fear. Zuko's transformation validates something we desperately want to believe, that the damage done to us doesn't compromise our self-worth. We watch him suffer under Ozai and Azula's cruelty, and we recognize that his villainy was never really his. It was him trying to earn love from people incapable of giving it. And when he finally rejects that and chooses his own definition of honor, we feel pride too, because we've been with him the entire time. We misattribute our feelings about his journey, proving you can turn what others have singled out about you as flaws into strengths, as a deep connection to who he is. After looking at Zuko deeply, I think I understand the fundamental difference between him and Loki seems to be that, to Loki, fear is much more complicated. For him, failing to achieve his glorious purpose is more terrifying than anything else. As the younger sibling, Loki has heavy-held resentments toward being second best to Thor and always feeling like an outsider. So when Loki discovered he wasn't Asgardian at all, that his father took him as a war prize and used magic to disguise what he really was, his entire sense of purpose is shaken. In that moment, realizing he might never earn his father's approval, no matter what he did, Loki gave in to his trickster nature. What followed was years of moving back and forth over the hero-villain line, one desperate attempt after another to be king, to be feared, to be someone, until a variant of him pulled out of time by the TVA watched footage of his entire predetermined life and realized it amounted to nothing. We can see ourselves in how he acts and carries himself. The need for purpose, the need for identity, and feeling a bit lost about everything. I can also see personally where being very ambitious and the whole "I am burdened with glorious purpose" thing overlaps with feeling like you're never enough. It's easy to sympathize with being so sure you have greatness inside you, but are unable to express it. You can spend years trying to be a good person and for the most part succeed, but also feel like the people in your life don't know you at all. It's lonely. Change when the people around you can't or won't see your accomplishments messes with your head. It makes you question if you've accomplished anything at all. So when TVA Loki changes, it's certainly not easy. He has to see that his ambitions will never happen. He has to become introspective instead and reflect on his life. Ironically, this change is what finally gives Loki his glorious purpose and a throne. Faced with the choice of accepting his fate as a villain or being erased from existence, Loki chose a third option that preserved all life and free will. He lets go of his identity as the god of lies, as it was a metaphysical weight that bound him to a specific cyclical story. He embraces the idea that lies are just stories, and as the god of mischief, he could tell any story he wanted. By sitting on a throne at the end of time, isolated but all-seeing, Loki became the living anchor and power source for the entire multiverse, ensuring all stories could continue to exist. This transition to a selfless protector enables others to write their own stories, fulfilling his true, glorious purpose. Now, let's be honest. Villains tend to be selfish and have motives that are usually very personal. If the hero is presented with the option of saving the world or saving the person they love, they will choose to save the world because it is the right thing. Villains choose what is more realistic to most of us, not some idealized, selfless action that holds no benefit to them or those they love. Zuko's journey is down to earth, escaping abuse and finding himself. Loki's is existential, discovering the truth about reality and his place in it. Neither one becomes good in the sanitized sense. They prove that you can carry your damage, your anger, your complexity into heroism. We don't have to be perfect to be good, we just have to choose to be better. Even so, sympathy alone does not bring us close to villains. To create intimacy that makes some people desire them as much as they fear them, a villain has to hit all of the points of apex predator, wholehearted enjoyment of chaos, a complex backstory, and attract to them people who are seemingly just as horrible, but whose role is envied by the audience. At the beginning, I mentioned that the line between good and evil runs through everyone, that we all have darkness within us. Now, hopefully you understand why that matters. We don't fall for villains despite their darkness, we fall for them because of it. Because they acknowledge the line we all hold inside of us, between who we're supposed to be and who we actually are, the line we're tempted to cross but fear we can never return from. This is our fifth and final reason: curiosity. We've talked about villains who withhold approval, who create their own misfortune, who embody darkness unapologetically, and who choose redemption. But the villains who combine all of it embody the uniquely human aspects of characters that make them feel intimately close. So close that, within their own stories, they choose characters who feel like placeholders for the viewer. Not the hero, the pure, simple protagonist. You. These villains are the chosen one. In my mind, two shows demonstrate this best: Killing Eve and Hannibal. For Villanelle and Eve, the definitions of protagonist and antagonist take a left turn. In any rational world, Eve would be obsessed with seeing Villanelle captured, tried, and jailed for murder. Instead, she's intrigued by how and why Villanelle kills. She comes to be the most exciting person Eve knows, exposing the fundamental differences between Eve and her husband, who only wants a quiet, normal life. Villanelle is also intrigued by the woman with wild hair and bottomless audacity who is suddenly consumed with hunting her. Honestly, we love Villanelle for the same reason Eve does. She's pure wish fulfillment. Breathtaking confidence that makes our curiosity salivate. She's funny, naughty, childish, fashionable, sexy, and does whatever pleases her senses without caring about moral compass, social norms, or consequences. People wonder how it feels to live this glamorous life while acting out on their repressed rage at an unfair world. Most of us want to be her and/or be with her. It's just like Regina or Miranda, that vice grip power, that aspirational aura. But Villanelle is what happens when an it girl takes revenge on the world for neglecting to appreciate her majestic being. In fiction, women who are strong tend to be angry or the cool girl who doesn't care about anything. It's nice to see a presentation that is domineering and glamorous and emotionally a lot. And for those who desire a more open-ended sexual identity, Villanelle represents pure inhibition. She loves pretty boys, MILFs, threesomes, and she'll put on a beard, dance around, and none of it stresses her in any way. She's assured in her gender expression and sexuality in a way a lot of people aren't able to be, and seeing that feels satisfying, especially when she often occupies the pursuant role, which is notoriously less common with women. The idea of being chased around by a confident woman you're mutually obsessed with kinda hits different. Inherently, Villanelle and Eve are alone and misunderstood. Villanelle has no idea what a normal life is. Her thrilling life that pulls Eve to her is utterly boring to Villanelle, who doesn't feel anything. It's heartbreaking to see she's lost, unequipped to find any motivation to understand herself or what is real or a lie. Eve, conversely, has shoehorned herself into the appearance of a conventional life. Adoring husband, house, a job at MI5, but it's a charade. It's not as obvious as in Villanelle's case, but Eve is essentially alone too, in the knowledge that the life she has built and populated doesn't reflect her inner self. And that's the intimacy between them. They find one another and know each other in their bones. But that intimacy is hard-won. By the season 2 finale, Villanelle tells Eve she loves her, but Eve knows she doesn't. Villanelle isn't equipped to that point to even know what love is. This version of her considers love controlling another person, hence her declaration of, "You're mine." Villanelle's journey to become the person who tells Eve to walk away took coming back to where her darkness originates. Her family. Once, she had a close relationship with her father, and a jealous mother who saw her first chance to give Villanelle up as a child after her father died, and took it. Through interactions with her mother, we see the way she isn't some cosmic event of Villanelle's birth aligned with the planets to create someone totally devoid of empathy. Clearly, Villanelle expected something. Maybe not love, but understanding or closure. Her mother rejects all of it. She tells Villanelle the darkness within her taints everything. She's unlovable. This emotional abuse is something many people have experienced. Closure rarely comes from other people, and I think in the moment Villanelle's mother decided to ignore their similarities and pin everything on her daughter, Villanelle saw the only way she was going to get closure was, like her mother, to take it. So Villanelle kills her. But she does spare her brothers. The one she sees as ignorant and unaffected by her mother's nature, and the one in whom she sees her younger self. She didn't want her mother's evil to destroy them. This act was driven by Villanelle's curiosity to know the people she long thought dead. It was a form of revenge for her child self who was left behind, and redemption, because for the first time she spares someone out of love. Sure, she's selfish, toxic, and damaged, but Villanelle has had a taste of real family before her mother ruined it. Until Eve, all Villanelle had known to uphold her normal was the 12, who are just as willing to kill her as she is to kill for them. She chooses Eve because they are both lost and hungry for something real, and Villanelle tries to let go of her so they'll no longer be monsters. Hannibal Lecter, on the other hand, forgoes any attempt of redemption. That doesn't mean transformation isn't a big part of the story. He sees his own becoming as a killer as something he brought out of himself, and he seeks to help Will Graham achieve the same. The show itself is really unique in that it manages to humanize a villain most viewers are already familiar with. Externally, Lecter is a calm, sophisticated, rich psychiatrist with old-world titles and is well-respected, attractive. Internally, he's a serial killer and cannibal who holds others to such a standard that they are either his people or they're small and insignificant in comparison. Mads Mikkelsen was told not to play Lecter like a crazy person. This shines through in his characterization because Hannibal doesn't kill people willy-nilly. He plans things meticulously, then arranges his victims' bodies in elaborate tributes of art. He tries to only choose victims he sees as morally corrupt or those he deems intolerable, whom he considers beneath him and refers to as pigs. According to the series, he ate his sister as a form of forgiveness. So in Lecter's twisted view, he's forgiving his victims for being garbage and turning them into something better. This extends to the living too. In his fabulously decorated home, he holds parties for the creme de la creme of Baltimore society. He feeds them his victims, a sadistic pleasure in making them complicit in his crimes and punishing them for their perceived rudeness. Lecter sees others as simplistic and predictable, lacking the depth of understanding he possesses. His exception is Will. Lecter is fascinated by the man's ability to empathize with serial killers and reconstruct their crimes mentally. This fascination leads Lecter to simultaneously act as Will's confidant and his tormentor. Initially, Lecter plans to frame Will for his crimes. It's too easy not to. Will's medical condition attacks his brain, causing him to lack emotion, control, and reliable memory. Not only will others believe it, but so will Will himself. Making Will think he's a killer is also an extreme form of exposure therapy. The more Lecter becomes obsessed with Will, the more gratification he gets from watching Will settle into the role. There is a vast difference between a show and reality. So in fiction, rooting for a killer is absolutely fine. We know Hannibal Lecter because we spent a lot of time with him. We have an intimate understanding of his history, thoughts, and worries. We also know he has never harmed an actual person because he doesn't exist. Plus, the whole series is centered on him and Will. You don't get to learn much about the victims and empathize with them. It's given that people will die because it's a crime show, so your mind doesn't pay attention to that fact except if it concerns the main hero's relationship. And Lecter's obsession with Will is mutual. Mind you, he doesn't want to love Lecter. That's the difference between him and Will. It is also an interesting dynamic that Will, despite being designated the protagonist, is far more antisocial than Lecter is. Lecter is in tune with his feelings, whereas Will always tries to suppress his. Will tries to cut that part out of himself that loves Lecter so many times, and he always fails. Lecter framed Will, killed his friend, and alienated him from everyone in Season 2, yet Will nearly ran away with him. Later, Lecter guts him, kills their daughter, and we watch Will consumed by guilt looking for him in Season 3. Will tried to stay away from him by getting married, having a child, but it took several weeks for him to leave everything behind and lie to everyone just to break Lecter out. This was really all part of Lecter's project to see how Will would react and to push Will to understand himself and the killer he was being framed as. Lecter also wanted Will to see him as the killer he was, hoping to eventually gain Will's acceptance. Unlike Villanelle, Lecter isn't overt in his attempts, doesn't wait to feel accepted before pursuing Will. Killing is their love language, which makes Will killing both of them the ultimate act of love in their now enmeshed, warped minds. I think, at their hearts, Hannibal and Killing Eve are simply love stories. I know it sounds weird, but both relationships are driven by an insatiable curiosity. Can I be loved for my darkness? Both villains opened a wound in the target of their affection, and out came gushing everything they had all hidden about themselves all their lives. In that sense, the relationships are transformatively beautiful and catastrophic. The Chosen One dynamic is the culmination of everything we love about villains. It fulfills our deepest fantasy that someone extraordinary sees something in us no one else does, even if they're dangerous. Especially if they're dangerous. Being loved is nice, but we yearn to be seen, completely, darkly, without judgment. Which is why when characters like Eve and Will, appearing totally unassuming, have unique traits that only their partners see, we can psychologically trade places with them. Unlike Regina, who makes us compete for scraps of approval, Villanelle and Lecter make the approval feel natural, destined even. Where Succession showed us that horrible people just make each other worse, Hannibal and Killing Eve make the compulsive entanglement seemingly worth all the pain. The Joker is thrillingly dark but disconnected. Villanelle and Lecter direct their darkness at their chosen person, making destruction feel like bonding. Unlike Zuko or Loki, Villanelle and Lecter don't want redemption, not in the hero sense. They want consumption. We fall for villains because they offer us what heroes can't. Permission to want power, to enjoy chaos, to carry our damage into the light. They give space to just be. Villainy, baggage, fear, and all. Curiosity is the true driving force behind all of these points. It balances our desire for self-destruction with self-preservation, to break down ourselves to our most raw state and embrace the visceral depths of ourselves that we've longed to know but feared to love. If you made it this far, thanks for walking that line between good and evil with me. And when you catch yourself loving a character you know you probably shouldn't, ditto. That's why I'm Pickle Ditto, because whatever storytelling pickle you're in, I've probably been there too.